everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta and life coach. And the camera was slightly off to the side. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to another Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things that are going on in our personal lives and how we are specifically handling them. And this week, one of the things that I think is really important to kind of look at and address that both you and I, Tim, have been kind of processing through in particular, has just been over the topic of just getting and handling criticism. Because honestly and truly, you know, the more people are aware of what you're doing, the more people are going to want to share their opinions about what you should be doing and how you should be doing them and where you're missing the mark. And sometimes their perceptions are spot on, and there's growth and opportunity in those bringing up those shortcomings. But sometimes it also may not be very effective because it's very opinionated. And so it could be really challenging to navigate when people are criticizing you, especially if you're also dealing with criticizing yourself the whole way through. And so I just want to kind of like dig into that, especially since this is your week. So I want to throw this one over to you, Tim, because this is something that's been heavily on your mind, especially, and see what you've been processing through and work it out with you.
Well, guys, you'll have to excuse me. My wife just brought me some delicious food and salsa. My nose is all running because it's spicy. But criticism sucks. You know, well, it sucks if you come at it from a very unhealthy place.
I mean, in general, it's not fun.
Well, you know, when all you're receiving is criticism, not from the perspective of somebody trying to help you, but somebody trying to break you down, it's a different story. But also, I think we too often conflate criticism and opinion. You know, we'll take somebody's opinion and weigh it against what we think of ourselves, because we don't value what we think. We think that we have to value all the opinions around us. But what do you think the difference is between criticism and opinion? I kind of want to tease that out first.
Well, criticism, I feel like in and of itself would probably more so have to do with someone is trying to show you a better way of doing something that they either feel like they have the knowledge of on. So like, I feel like a critic would be someone who has been studying a particular area and then they're making it a judgment based off their studies of what you're doing. I feel like, although the word criticism is negative in general, so it could be more general than that and say that it's just someone, you know, saying, you know, this is the way something should be and it's more authoritative. But then opinion is more, well, I mean, it's more ambiguous because just the word itself. So if someone's giving you their opinion, hopefully they're stating their opinion as the fact that it is an opinion and it is just their perceptions, and it's an option of which you can pursue or ignore entirely. But criticism, I feel, is more of a direct statement about what you're doing, and opinion is just more an option.
Yeah, I think criticism, the reason criticism is often given a bad rap is because we feel like criticism requires us to change in some way, or there's the expectation for us to change. Whereas somebody's opinion, it's like, that's just what they think, you know? Like, I'm just trying to think about the people that I'm critical towards. Like, I can be critical towards you sometimes, Brandon. You know, and the people within my circles, just because I care about them. You know, and when I'm in my weakness, I'm critical about people that poke me the wrong way, or you know, annoy that side of me where it's just like, I'm just aggravated with them. And I don't really have a relationship with them, but I feel like my being okay is dependent on them changing, and hence why I can be critical. Um, but the older I get, the more I realize that you can have an opinion about something and not need to communicate it. And you can have an opinion about somebody, and it's okay if it goes um, unsated. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
when I was younger, I feel like I just wanted to be known. I just wanted to feel like I had a voice, and I wanted things to change because I wanted to know that my voice and my thought patterns were valuable.
Hmm.
And it just seems like the more I get older, the less I care about that. There's a lot of stuff that we put out here that people may reject or may not even care about. But the fact is, I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're doing it. But then that would be different if I went to somebody specifically and I said, hey, let's talk about you being critical. Instead, we're just having an opinion, throwing it out there. I wrote, excuse me, let me go to my YouTube channel real quick. I redid my mission statement yesterday,
Hmm.
and this kind of has me thinking about it. And my mission statement reads, Break the Meta is a community resource intended to help people understand their value and how to live in love. Just to be clear, our community is not about convicting people to believe in Christianity. In fact, I want to challenge Christian culture from the position of discerning Jesus from religion and tradition and love as a choice from love as a feeling. My goal is to communicate what love truly is, how we address the areas that prevent us from believing we are worthy of it, and how to live in a manner that love overflows into the lives of those around us. I personally believe that this is that in this process you'll discover who Jesus is and just how much he cares for you, but I also acknowledge that it's your choice whether or not you accept this as a truth. Either way, I hope my story, perspectives, and those of others in our community help you understand one thing: you are loved. And I guess the reason I bring that up is I'm thinking about criticism. And the thing that comes to mind to me, Brandon, is Christian culture.
Hmm.
It's one of the most critical dynamics out there. You have to change in order to, you have to change because you have to change. And it all hinges on this weird thought pattern of you can only be accepted by God and your value can only be recognized if you change, which is the basis of negative critic or unhealthy criticism.
Hmm.
You know, and I don't know, Brandon. I want to know what you think about this, and for those of you watch, I'm curious what you think too. Do you think God's perspective on the world is more criticism or opinion? Do you think the church's perspective on the world is more based in criticism or opinion? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, the thing that started coming to my mind before you asked that question of why Christianity can be so critical of others and self has to do with its origins, and just the perfection that is God in general. Um, and the fact that before Jesus came and died for our sins, it was virtually impossible to completely and totally appease God, because every little thing that we would take for granted, God does not take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does not. There is no space. For instance, we were talking about this in church yesterday about the importance of forgiving others. There is no space for unforgiveness in God. Like, the Bible says, even, and this is even I think it's even in the New Testament. If you forgive others, you will be forgiven. If you don't forgive others, you yourself will not be forgiven. Like, there's a lot of weight put on it. It's a pass or fail. And before Christ, like, there's so many laws that were good and healthy, and some of which were just cultural based that are important specifically for the Jews because God was helping them form into a nation unto themselves. So he was giving them specific laws and customs to make them a unique civilization. But besides that, just a lot of thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt
Mm-hmm.
not whatever. There's just a lot of different things. So then, why you ask, why is Christianity so critical? Well, this is where things began for Christianity. Before Christianity was a thing and Christ turned it into Christianity, there was Judaism and you had the law, and there you go. And so a lot of people it's hard to figure out where grace begins and law
Mm-hmm.
ends, kind of thing. We know that Jesus came and he took away the requirement of the law, but we also know that he still is holy and he still wants us to be perfect as God is perfect. But
Mm-hmm.
it's weird. So it's like, I think it's just.
Well, just thinking about our culture, if you go on social media, it seems like there's three types of people. You have the people that are very forward about criticizing others, like you need to change because this is right or wrong. And then you have the people that respond to that saying, I'm not going to change. And actually, you should change because you're being overbearing.
Mhm.
And then you have people who lurk and they're just like, can we just chill,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, and I guess this kind of gets into the whole concept of universalism, because people are not perfect,
Right.
especially Christians. There's a lot of Christians who have really messed up thought processes.
Mhm.
And guys, I just say that I'm not attacking Christianity as a whole. It's just heavy on my heart to see Jesus misrepresented, especially when people think they're doing it in Jesus's name.
Yeah.
And I do that too. So I'm not calling everybody else out. I'm just as guilty. But just thinking about 1 Corinthians 13, where it says that Jesus does not insist on his own way, right? And if that's the case, that basically what that says is there is a truth and you're not forced to accept it, right? But when you're in relationship with Jesus, the difference between conviction and condemnation is when it feels like you're forced to do something to have a relationship, right? And conviction is where you choose something because you want the relationship to be healthy, right? It's a choice. So all that to say, talking about criticism and opinion, somebody would say, well, whether or not this situation is wrong, that is your opinion. Well, I guess that's true based on what you believe. I had somebody ask me the other day, I forget exactly what the question was, but basically, why should I do this thing or why should I believe this way if I don't acknowledge that Jesus was real, if I don't acknowledge Christianity for what it is, if I don't acknowledge that God is a thing? Like, why would I believe that? And I was like, it's a good question. Like marriage, why would you get married aside from the legal and I guess tax benefits? Why would people who don't believe in the covenant before God get married in the first place? And I guess that's why a lot of people aren't getting married these days. And it's just an opinion that they're not accepting. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, if you have a relationship with Jesus and you want that to be healthy, a healthy criticism would be, okay, well, here's the truth. And in order for our relationship to be healthy, you have to at least consider it. Like the other night when you and I had some confrontation, I think confrontation and criticism kind of go hand in hand. But I offered you a criticism. And we leaned into that because for the sake of our relationship, we wanted to reconcile what was true from untrue, And, if you and I didn't have that relationship, I think it would have just been more of a situation of, Tim, well, that's your opinion. I'm not even going to consider this. So I guess teasing that out, the difference between criticism and opinion has a lot to do with your relationship with the person. And is it worth it to lean into that? But, thinking about criticism as a whole, because sometimes you'll receive criticism from third parties, is all criticism worth considering?
It greatly depends on the who. If some random person came and started criticizing me for no apparent reason, not really going to entertain that much. I'm not to say that I wouldn't listen to it, period, because I'm always open to grow. And so I guess there's just multiple factors as to the proximity to you that person is, where your heart is in the moment. You know, if someone's coming at you and they're criticizing you and it's bringing nothing but anxiety or anger, like, it's good maybe to separate yourself from that for the moment. You know, really, it depends on what God's told you. If God's told you something in particular and someone's criticizing you to the contrary, really doesn't matter what they criticize you on in that case, because God overrides what someone else says, and God's yoke is easy and his burden is light. So if someone is trying to burden you with 5,000 things you should be doing to make yourself better, well, also understand position for the person too. Like, the person who is coming and criticizing me, are you someone who is not doing what I'm doing? You know, or are you someone who's been down the road around the block? I mean, there's just so many things. I'm not sure every criticism is worth considering, but to say that none is worth considering is also wrong. So that's my thoughts.
I think some questions you can ask yourself, because, guys, I have a lot of difficulty receiving criticism. And it's because I have a history of insecurity. You know, I try my best not to walk in that, but, you know, we all have areas of weakness that we just deal with. You know, it's probably not going to be, I may never completely get rid of insecurity. It'll get better, but, you know, we have to have weaknesses because, I mean, the Bible says, in your weakness, I am made strong. When you go into new situations, new areas, there are going to be places where you fall short, you know, and oftentimes it's areas that you think that you've arrived in. Like, I know the next season of my life, my insecurities are going to be teased out because, well, I'm going to be tested, you know. But addressing the question, is all criticism worth considering? I think to a degree. You know, God highlighted something in Proverbs to me the other day, talking about weights and measures, and I have a difficulty with my perceptions of people, seeing people laterally. I feel like I have to always give something to somebody, and I feel like if I'm not giving something, then it should be a position of receiving. Like, it's tough for me to see them laterally, and to see people all the same. Like, the way I see Brandon and his critical viewpoints, I would receive differently from somebody that is, I don't know, hanging out at Walmart, not wearing a mask, you know, doing things. Oftentimes when I'm judgmental of somebody, it's difficult for me to receive healthy criticism from them.
Yeah.
But is all criticism worth considering? I think some questions you should ask yourself is, does the person giving me the criticism have the fruit of what they're asking me to change?
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody's saying, hey, Tim, you probably shouldn't go around, you know, talking to all these different girls when I was single. When, you know, if you're going to pursue one girl, she wants to know that your eyes are only for her, you know, it doesn't. And I was thinking to myself, man, I don't want this criticism because this feels good. I like talking to lots of different people, you know, but the person was married and they've had a healthy marriage. It's like, okay, well, they had the fruit of what I want. Maybe I should listen to them and say no to my pride. And I think another thing to consider is, are they actually concerned about my welfare, or are they concerned about their welfare and by me changing?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think sometimes people get challenged, and because they get challenged, they slip into critical mode because that is their defense mechanism to how they feel. Because it's very possible that they could have grown up where someone was constantly challenging them in an unhealthy way, and the only way they find that they could stop the abuse is by becoming critical in return, and that would have actually bought them some brevity. So then you step away from that, and now, you know, they're not having that same thing, but they still feel challenged, and so here comes this old part of themselves rearing to then begin criticizing a person so that they no longer feel challenged. Stuff like that could happen. So yeah, you're talking about, like, are they criticizing me because of their own well-being? It's very possible that someone can do that. You know, again, the higher up you go, the more people are going to become critical of you. And if you accept every single criticism, you will have no foundation to stand on, because it will be constantly shifting what people think you should be doing with your life.
Mhm.
And so it's just, and again, that's why it's really important to have God be the number one in that one, because he's pretty steady. He's not going to suddenly give you some kind of new thing that you're going to like, oh my God, I have to do this whole change. Like, he's pretty steady. He gives you time to build, and then he'll show you a new area to build upon, and then a new area over here, and then it's just always this exchange upward.
Yeah. Well, that story, there's a story in the Bible where God uses a donkey to talk to a person. And, donkeys are kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the four-legged beast world. They just do all the grunt work. They're not like calves or whatever, or like horses.
Yeah.
And when you think that you've arrived, it's very easy to think that you are your position. And it's really easy for us to think that people are their position, especially their position in our lives. Because I'm thinking about somebody who might be a top end manager or something, and they think, well, I'm the big dude here, and they get so full of themselves that they can't listen to the people beneath them. And I think a mark of true maturity is being willing to listen, but not listen from a place of being threatened. Because I know that when I'm at my weakest, when people come to me and say things that are critical, if I feel threatened, it's because I'm not walking in confidence. It's because I'm thinking, oh, they must see things in me that are bad, and I'm not okay with that. Or, I'm not willing to let all my walls down and just be a human with the person. But going back to that Proverbs about the equal scales, everybody has a perspective, and everybody sees things. And just because somebody might have an entry level position at your job, or just because they might not have all the fruit that you want to back their perspective, maybe there's words of wisdom there too. But I think instead of just accepting it and just saying, well, I can't be on my high horse, I just have to accept what everybody says and engage in universalism, I think you have to just go put forth the effort to accept what they say and think, okay, does this have value? Because that takes intentionality. It does take effort to do so.
In the vein of receiving criticism, I kind of live by the 1, 2, 3 I'm calling it principle. It's not like I can here you go, here's where you can find the print. No, this is my own principle, and that essentially means that if I hear it one time, cool, we'll take that. And depending on who it is, now if it's on a topic that I've already been thinking about and researching about, and then they bring an idea, well, then I might immediately work with that criticism. But if it's not, and it just comes out of the blue, and I don't see how it fits in my life in any shape, way, or form, well, then I'll take it and I'll put it up on the shelf. And then if a second person comes along and they say the same thing, then I'll take it back down, re-examine it, look at it, and then if I still can't figure out how it applies, shelf it again. And then by the third time, if a third person ends up coming and saying the exact same thing, and we're talking about people that are connected into my life, that know who I am, that see what I do, if 3 people that are close to me are saying the same thing, by that point, maybe I need to really evaluate this criticism that I've received the first time around. And so I'm still just as open to criticism. It's just I'm not it's my way of kind of keeping out, unhealthy criticism from people, because sometimes people really just have had a bad day, and so they attack you, or they don't know anything about you, and what little they've seen goes contrary to what they think is right. And actually, if what little they've seen, it actually was the reality, then there would be a problem. But since they've only seen so little, they don't see the rest of the picture. So there's a myriad of reasons why people decide to criticize someone. And so really, yeah, I think having a system where it's just if 3 people that are close to me, completely separate people, are saying the same thing, maybe something needs to
Mhm.
be done.
Yeah. I think if it's more isolated too, like if it's one person and their criticisms against you, well, for one, you can tell that it's not for your better welfare and they're trying to protect themselves, or, they're just angry or fuming or whatever. I think how you respond to that, like, is all criticism worth considering? Like, actually considering it, I think it depends on your position too. Because if you're in the position where you're barely keeping your head above water, whether it's finances, relationships, your life in general, whatever, it's really hard to give to other people. But if you're engaging in a position where you think to yourself, okay, well, part of my purpose right now and what I'm doing, my vocation, excuse me, whatever it is sowing and investing into people, I think you do need to consider all forms of criticism from the perspective of asking why, right? Because if you're really trying to build people up, if they come to you with a criticism that's addressing you or something that you've done or whatever, or if they're just like talking about other people behind their backs with criticisms, I think one of the best questions you can ask to challenge that is why? Like, why do you think that? Okay, so you believe that I am overbearing, because I had somebody recently tell me that Tim, you talk about being judgmental and calling out Christian culture and stuff, but you're being judgmental in and of yourself. Okay, and then we had that guy that posted on one of our YouTube videos. True fact: only Christians are brainwashed, or only people who believe in God,
God.
or something like that. I was just racking my brain, like, how do I engage in that? Because that's a criticism, How do I engage in that in a way that would be life giving, that would not be defending myself? And because, honestly, sometimes I think to myself, what if God is not real?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What if all the stuff that we engage in is a farce? I would want somebody to tell me, because
Right.
I built my entire marriage off of my relationship with God. It's like, if God's not real, I could be having a lot more fun. you know, uh, that I kind of joke saying that, but at the same time, I don't, because part of Christian culture is saying no to fun things or what we think is fun or fulfilling. But you know, actually, let me post this one because this kind of leads into it. Why does criticism make me feel some kind of way? And the reason I want to go there is because I've been receiving criticisms recently, like I just mentioned. I'm like, why does it hit me that way? Do I feel attacked? Do I feel like what if I'm doing something wrong? There's that sense of eminence, I guess, um, especially when it comes to something that I believe a lot in. Like what we do, and about my relationship with God. I truly believe, like I said in my mission statement, I believe that in pursuing love, you will find out who Jesus is. 100%. I believe that. I believe that getting to know Jesus is really the only way that you can understand how to love somebody properly. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I have seen situations where there are people who don't follow Jesus that love well, you know? Um, and I got a whole idea about that as well. But it's like, I want to become, I want to engage criticism from the way where I don't always feel attacked by it,
Mm-hmm.
because that shows my insecurity. Um, but being able to ask the question why, I think it makes me feel some kind of way, because I don't want to engage and I don't want to ask the question why, because I don't want the fact that I need to change to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's scary, especially when you think that you're doing something well.
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to why people feel some kind of way whenever they're being criticized is because it's an area that's not presently settled in your heart. And so life is set up that if you have buttons, they will be pressed. Like just be prepared. If there's any kind of thing that you are insecure about, afraid about, there's a big loving God who will love to press those buttons to make you aware that that needs to be dealt with until he finally is. He's not going to just remove people from your life that's going to criticize you or pointed areas, so that way you don't feel insecure. Like, no. Like, as long as there are triggers, they will be pressed until you either have no more triggers or you isolate yourself. And we really don't want people to isolate. So you want to work on not having, like as Dan Muller was talking about, not having a landing strip for the plane to land. So like if there's an area that you're insecure about, it's good to figure out why are you insecure about it, and then address that. And then if there is no place, then I feel like that's where you step into what we've been talking about previously about weathering through the storms. Like, it's just a storm. Like, it's just a feeling. Like, the fact that, no one enjoys, but even the Bible says so. No one enjoys punishment, or things of that nature. It's not pleasurable, but in the end, it produces greater righteousness. It produces a harvest of righteousness. So that's the whole thing. Like criticism, punishment, whatever, any form of negative whatever, it's not a bad thing. It just is a thing. You're not going to like it, but you can get better at handling it by just recognizing that it's going to suck. And then you can either accept it or deny it or whatever, depending on if it's actually relevant or not. But I think even more than that, Tim, it's really important to know, is what you're doing good? Because if you're not solid on that, then every criticism is going to be a big deal until you're solid on, am I doing the right thing the right way? And some of that, even knowing that, you have to work to hold on to that, because it's so easy to but wait.
Yeah, Brandon, this makes me think about I still do this sometimes. But when I was younger, I would engage in things that I knew were wrong, and I didn't want to talk to people about it because I knew it was wrong. I knew that was going to be brought up. And so I knew if there was criticism, it's like I would be exposed, and I feel like I would have to change, not only because the person sees it, but I also see it. It's like, at that point, I'd have to make excuses, or I would just have to be honest about how I want to do something sinful. We're all like that. But as you were talking, I was just thinking about, people's relationship with Jesus and using that as a mirror for how we engage with other people. Excuse me. Why does criticism make me feel some kind of way? And I think, recently I had that talk with David Ibrahim, and he came from a background of being legalistic and thinking that in his religious group or the group, his church or whatever, he thought that he and his brother were the ones that were not being legalistic and everybody else was, but they were actually being legalistic, And then on the other side of it, he was like, wow, I didn't know that God actually just loves me for my value and who I am, and everything else is secondary to that, and there have been so many people in my life recently that feel that way. So the question, why does criticism make me feel some kind of way? I think, much like that scenario, my relationships with other people, when they bring criticisms to me, especially if I don't know them very well, I'm always questioning, do they value me first? Are they specifically calling out what I've done before they see that Tim, you're worthy, you're worth it, you have value in my eyes, you are this, but this behavior is just present. We want the behavior to change instead of we want who you are to change.
The honest truth is, it doesn't matter whether or not someone values you or not, because your value is superior to whether someone recognizes it or not, because God always recognizes it. That's why it's important to have God first, because if God is first, you will thrive. You will be the best, because he is always changing, but he is also always the same. Like he is consistently changing. But but what is also consistent is his view of you. And he will always call you up to places that you never thought you were capable of, but are, especially with his strength. And so it's just like, it doesn't really matter whether someone sees your value or not. You got to know that God sees your value, and then as he sees your value, then you see your value through him.
Yeah, well, I get that. And I think a lot of people get that, but at the same time, this message is for also for people who don't believe in God, because they still have to. Even if you don't believe in God, my goal is that you understand what love is and how to receive love, and how to maintain confidence about who you really are. Um, you know, I totally get that with God, but at the same time, we're still humans, and we still have relationships with people, and it's still super confusing to figure that out a lot of the time, and even in the best Christian communities, even in the best communities where Jesus is present, we struggle with kinship. We struggle with acceptance. We struggle with community, you know? So why does criticism make me feel some kind of way? Just engaging in those conversations. Even what if somebody doesn't separate who I am from what I do? What if? That's the big hump that we need to get over. That when you receive a criticism, well, while it sounds like they're attacking me, they're not attacking me. They're attacking something that I've done, thinking that it's me.
Yeah.
I think that's the crux of it, because once you understand that, I truly believe that a lot of our perceptions about who God is based on the things we've experienced. A lot of people have difficulty believing that God is a kind father if their dad was kind of dogmatic and just like iron fisted and, behavior over personal value type situation. Like, hey, because you've done this, and this, you are a failure in my eyes. It's not good enough that you're my son,
Yeah.
And we take that, we supplant that whole concept on how we expect people to engage with us in the future. And it's scary, but I think we have to do that for ourselves. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were just talking about, well, before going into the conversation, I really didn't know where they were regarding our relationship and how things have been, how my actions and their actions and the results thereof were going to mix, and I went into it, if I'm honest, I went into it having subliminal thoughts of this isn't going to go well, or being prepared for a fight going into confrontation, but then I realized it's not an attack on me. It's an attack on behaviors and thoughts that I've had, which are separate from my value and how this person values me. Because the fact that they're coming to my home, the fact that they are spending an hour or two talking with me about things, they think I'm worth that.
Yeah.
And anytime somebody brings something to you, even if they're in distress mentally or emotionally, you got to understand the fact that they're talking about it means that there's some value there somewhere, whether it's in them thinking they can get it from you, them seeing value in the relationship, whatever it is, there is a value proposition there somewhere if you're engaging in criticism and conflict.
The interesting thing about people criticizing you, though, that I have picked up as I've gotten older, is that if someone is taking the time to criticize you, that does mean there is some sort of care within them. Regardless if they care for you or not, there is a care within them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would not speak what is on their mind. So that's whether it's a care because they are concerned for their own selves and they see that in them, and so they just speak and say it immediately in you. The things, because the honest truth is, the weird thing is that the things that anger us oftentimes are the things that we are very capable of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if someone's going to criticize you on something, understand they probably can see that in themselves and they're trying to get to you about it instead, kind of thing. It's weird. I don't know. I feel like that might be a slight derailing, and it's not exactly the direction you're headed, but that hit me, mm-hmm. and I thought I wanted to bring it out because it's something I've been processing. Because I'll have some people that will just randomly come at me, and I can get upset that they're coming at me and concerned or anxious, or I'd be like, wow, I appreciate you taking the time to let me know about this. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do about it, per se. However, I'm glad that you care about this thing. And then what I've tried to do is implement what you use of asking them questions, because that helps me to figure out why they're coming at me, or at the very least, it gets them introspective and they don't want to do that, and then they stop.
Yeah, the reason I do that is because that's often what God does with me. He doesn't just tell me things. He doesn't mandate me to do things. He just asks me questions, because he trusts that I'm going to arrive at a good conclusion if I just think about it logically and long enough and from the position of love. Like if I'm thinking about something poorly and I get hit with, hey, if you're supposed to be loving other people, then why do you act this way? Or why are you looking at them this way? It's like, ooh, okay, I see your point, you know? But I think asking why and asking questions is such a great way to have a position of love, but also confrontation. Not from a position of you need to change this, but from a position of hey, let's figure this out together. You know. But the question I posted was, how should we engage in critical thoughts about us? So if people have critical thoughts about us, or we have critical thoughts about ourselves, or society, or a group, or you read a book. Something just creates critical thoughts about us. How should we engage those?
Whether it's someone coming at us or something within ourselves?
Sure. Any types of critical thoughts.
I do think each critical thought that comes you don't have to accept every criticism that comes your way, but I do think it's important to think about the criticism that comes your way, so that way you can properly throw it away or work on it. Because, again, God is in the business of using unusual ways of pointing out areas that need improvement, such as animals. Not something that's outside of God's wheelhouse. So it's not impossible for a homeless person on the street to criticize you and actually be dead right. Like, you can receive criticism from any place. Doesn't mean that it is dead right. It's not impossible for it to be dead right. Like it could be. And so taking a second to think about it, maybe not necessarily in the moment if you're not in the right mental space, but afterwards to get yourself to a place where you can comfortably think about what was criticized. Then after thinking about that, you can then make a decision of whether this is just not applicable, or if it is, it's nowhere that I know where to put it for the moment, so I'm going to shelf it for later, or I need to work on this right now, kind of thing. But I think as you're talking about critical thinking through question asking, stuff of that nature, how people have asked, God has asked you questions and you ask other people questions, ask yourself questions. Does this somehow apply to me? Is there an area that I've been missing or whatever? And if it bothers you, I think that's where it's good to have people close to you to then bring up the criticism with them, so it's not just getting stuck in your head. I externally process things, so I do best if I can get the thought out of my head and process it with another person. So in my case, to get it out with another person is very important. Even if you don't externally process, I think it's still good to have another person to be your sounding board, to throw ideas at or criticisms at that you've been given, to chew it out with them, what if it's rightness or wrongness. But after that, if there is no basis for whatever, no need to let it sit and cause buildup of garbage in your life.
Yeah. I think, early on in my career, one of the biggest things that I struggled with was pride. Every time I would get an accolade or an award or get called out on a conference call in a good way, or Tim, how did you do this? Teach the class, whatever. Or if I got a promotion or a raise or whatever, or recognition, whatever it was really easy for me to get prideful, thinking that, okay, well, now I have value. Now I'm validated in how I see myself because everybody else finally sees me this way, Or I think I suck. And it's like, ooh, well, this feels good. This is different. This isn't what I'm used to. I like this better. And then I like with closed fists hold on to it so tightly, and I don't want to let it go. The question is, how should we engage in critical thoughts about us? I think one of the most important things, guys, and this is a really, really, really good practice if you ever want to do anything of significance that's bigger than you in life, is learn to separate who you are from what you do. And learn to separate, well, we'll get to other people in a second, but for other people, learn to separate what they've done from who they are as well. because that's what God does with us. Going back to the story of the prodigal son did a lot of dumb stuff, wasted his inheritance, had no bearing on the father's heart. His father was just glad that his son was back because he loves him for who he is. And then if you look at the Gospels, when Jesus called all the disciples, they were from different disciplines. They were from different backgrounds. Some of them were sinners. Some of them he knew were going to betray them. It wasn't about the actions. It was about who they are, and I think it's so cool that the Gospels are explained through the perspectives of three different people. I think there was a doctor, there was a lawyer, and then there was I forget. Was he a fisherman?
I don't remember exactly. One was a doctor for sure.
Yeah, Luke was the doctor,
Luke was
right?
the doctor, yes. I wonder if one of the fishermen was the one that wrote it.
Well, either way, the point I'm trying to make is that whenever God engaged with people, whether it was King David, who was the king of all of Israel, dancing in the streets, giving away all of his wealth, to the lady that had $2, and she put the $2 in the offering jar, he viewed them the exact same way. And that's just so magical. And if God does that, and that's how he views us, and he's the king of the universe, then why do we go in thinking that what we do and the results of our life quantify how we should view ourselves? It doesn't, because you can always change that, you know? And that's the key, just realizing that being present is realizing, well, like being saved, for instance. You can't just say the sinner's prayer one time and be done. It's not about that, guys. No. Being saved is a present thing. It's like choosing relationship.
Yeah.
And, tomorrow you get another chance to do that. If you screwed up a relationship yesterday, you have the opportunity today to do whatever you can to fix it, or to communicate love and repent, apologize, whatever. And if you don't do it today, you have tomorrow, unfortunately, sometimes we die and we don't have tomorrow. That's why Carpe Diem, seize the moment, is so important.
The Nintendo inside of me went ba-dun, dun, 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 but as I'm wearing a Nintendo shirt.
Yeah. But, guys, if you had to ask me what I thought the secret to life was, or the meaning of life, I would think that this is it: separating value from circumstance. Because that's exactly what the whole reason Jesus died was he died to show us that the circumstances do not matter compared to how he views us. And that's that relationship piece. So how should we engage in critical thought about ourselves? Well, separate what we've done from who we are.
Man, a lot of life is all about living outside of just perceptions. Like, the people who invent things see things that don't exist yet. The people who make discoveries are looking for something they haven't found. The people who write music write down something that's never been played and then creates into existence. Sure, there are themes and patterns that give us clues that this would probably exist that we can follow after. But until it is done, it doesn't exist. Life is about living outside of what's presently known and constantly moving forward into the unknown. And just discovering it. It's whether it had always existed and we're just now discovering it, or if it is something that is now in existence because we were able to pull it out of ourselves. Life is constantly living constantly living outside of circumstance. If you become defined by what's already been known, you are limiting yourself to what you have and see and feel and whatever. But we are bigger than just the things that we can easily see and touch and record. It's different. We live, if people only lived by what they see, touch, feel, experience, then there would be no discoveries. There would be none of that spark to go find new things. And this is not just a biblical thing. This is just a reality thing. God or no God, if you live your life with only what you see, you are only going to go that far. You have to continue to, in faith, press through into what you hope to believe to see if it exists or not. And if you have no hope that it exists and nothing you're moving towards that is not presently known, it's not going to just come to you. It's not going to just come out of your mind and become a song and it's just going to play itself. The story is not going to be written. You know, these things just take effort. They take living outside of just what is seeable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to put it. I feel like there are better ways to put it, but that's the best way I know how to put it.
Yeah. So this last part is how we should engage critical thoughts. How should we engage in offering critical thoughts to others?
That's I feel pretty equipped for that one. Um, any sort of critique that you happen to have for other people must be done in love. If you cannot love the person that you are critiquing, I would prefer you don't critique them because it's not helpful. You're not giving it with their best in mind. You are giving it probably with selfish ambition of some sort, whether you see they're thriving too much and you want to knock them down a peg. So I'm going to criticize them and be critical so that way I can feel better about myself. Just stop. Don't. Mm-hmm. It is better not to criticize and because you can't love a person than it is to criticize someone outside of love. Like that love component is really important. And what it means to criticize someone out of love means that you are seeing that they have value that extends their current level. And you want to see them achieve that. And so love is the motivating factor to then bring it up to them and show them a better way so that they can achieve higher. If your motive is to help someone to achieve higher, that's a good place to be when providing criticism. Not perfect. There are other factors like being patient, being gentle, being kind to a person, being understanding for where they're currently at, which again has to do with patience. But the most important motivating factor to criticizing someone, it has to be done in love. If it's not done in love, stop it right now. Just stop. Not helpful. No one needs to know your opinion, your critical thoughts if it is not based out of love. Just not necessary.
Yeah. Now, I guess to put a little bit more tangible action behind that, because when we say do it in love, it's like, okay, we know how to do that, but as a concept, but how do you actually walk that out? So how should we engage in offering critical thought about others? I know that one of the mistakes that I've made in the past is I've offered critical thoughts about others in front of other people. That sucks.
Yeah.
The whole love others as yourself thing. I don't feel loved when somebody calls me out in front of other people.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't know, if it's a board meeting and everybody's lateral to one another and it's understood that we have an environment of this and it's not something that is a personal thing, and we're all looking and it's understood that we're all talking about this anyways, I think that's okay. But
yeah,
in almost every circumstance, if you're being critical of somebody, you need to do it in private. And I think a very loving thing to do, especially if you don't have a good relationship with them, is to say something like, let's say that I think somebody drinks too much, right? Or I think that they're dressing kind of slutty. I don't know, whatever it is, right? I would probably send them a message or in person just say, hey, this is on my mind. I'd like to talk about this if you're willing. Because 1 Corinthians 13 says, don't insist on your own way, right? And don't be puffed up thinking that you have an answer. A good way to present a criticism to somebody is, I have a perspective that I want you to consider if you're willing to consider it. That's it. I have a perspective that I want you to consider if you're willing to consider it. Because the first question we asked was, what's the difference between criticism and opinion? A lot of times it's we want them to change, and it's really easy when we're conveying criticism, thinking, well, I my goal is to get them to change. No, my goal isn't to get them to change. Truly, if you're offering criticism, my goal is to help them separate their actions from who they are. Because if somebody has negative actions and they're acting in sin, they're not loving other people, that's not who they are. That's not who they are designed to be. That's not who they want to be. We all want to feel loved and validated, and we're called to love and validate other people in who they are, encourage them, right? So if I'm doing something that makes other people feel bad or puts myself over other people, I'm not going to have a fruitful life. I'm just not. It doesn't matter if you follow Jesus or not. You're not going to have a fruitful life. You might have it for a short time, but it's going to be empty. And by saying, hey, I have a perspective I want you to consider, if you're willing, it puts them in the position of being able to choose that. Because there's a stark difference between somebody changing because they have to and somebody changing because they want to. When somebody changes because they choose it, it has a lot more longevity than them changing because you just tell them that they're wrong. When you just tell somebody that they're wrong and you convince them without them arriving at the decision themselves, it becomes all about the action and not about their heart. It becomes about the behavior and not who they are.
Yeah.
So, giving that to them on a plate, saying, hey, here's something for you to consider. Think about an animal that's been beaten, right? You can't just go up and force feed it. It's going to bite you because it's thinking about self-preservation. But if you just leave the food on the ground, it might take them a little while, but they'll slowly come up to it as the trust is built. And honestly, presenting things like that, that's how you build trust, because the person understands that regardless of what they've done, you value them enough to allow them to make the decision. Yeah. Think about Jesus. He could easily and smite all of us and get us all to change. But the whole reason he put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden is because he wanted to give us choice.
Yeah.
Love does not insist on its own way. He wanted to give us choice, because only when there's choice can there be a relationship. And only when both sides mutually choose one another do you have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Change that is made based on compulsion is not permanent change and not worth having. So, like, if you're coming in to criticize someone into obedience, that's manipulation, and that's only going to last so long as you can continue to hold anything that you obtain by your own strength must be maintained by your own strength. But anything that you are able to influence to happen and someone else decides to do it, that's no longer on your strength. And that allows for a connection with that person. It allows for real change because they've been able to make the decision themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this last question, I guess I want to close with it, is, should you convey every criticism? No. No, you should not. I guess if I think about it, out of all the criticisms, like before the stream, guys, I was really annoyed. I was annoyed at Brandon. I was annoyed at my wife. I was annoyed at myself. I was annoyed at my project that I was working on. I was annoyed that my torso is all itchy today. I was hungry. There were a lot of criticisms that were up here, and if I had just let the cannon loose and just, Brandon, stop, Ariane, stop, and just sent letters to each of them, and just gosh, man, it would take forever. It'd be so exhausting because there's so many things that annoy me, so many things, but a lot of them really don't matter.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are just personal preference and opinion anyways. Like Brandon was singing before the stream and it was annoying me, but is Brandon singing annoying? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. That's the difference between criticism and opinion. My criticism was, Brandon, you need to stop because it's making me feel a certain kind of way. When in actuality, it was just my opinion because I was in an annoyed mood, right? Brandon has a great voice, and what he was singing was actually really awesome. And in a different mood, I wouldn't have had the criticism. But
yeah,
I would hazard to say that 95% of our criticisms are because we want to feel a certain way that we don't.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly feel like it's important that before you give a criticism to think about, is this something that I'm doing because there's truly an issue, or am I doing it because I'm afraid for them? Like anxious, afraid. Like not like you see them walking towards, a busy street without looking both ways, anxious, but more so like you know, this looks very eerily close to something I did, and I don't want them to consider the reasoning before you speak up about the criticism, kind of thing, because that could save you a lot of time. What? Because they say that there was an analogy about this of a father that had a son put up a fence, and the son put the fence up quick and sloppily, and in anger. And so the father was able to utilize that as a teaching tool to show him that the nails that he put up the fence can be removed, but there is a scar that is left behind that cannot be healed when you try to nail things back in again. And so you really want to take your time to think. The Bible says that God is slow to get angry, and it talks for us to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. So if you take some time to think about something before you criticize someone, then you can avoid unnecessary criticism that's just nitpicking because I'm in a bad mood today, kind of thing. And so, that's just, it's really good. You should not convey every criticism, because some criticism is just, you're not you when you're hungry. Could be just as simple as that. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, I think I've been satisfied.
All right, awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun today, and I want to just take a second to thank our newest supporter, Austin. Thank you so much for supporting us. We are very appreciative of your support of Thought Raid. I'm personally very grateful. So I just want to take a second and call you out and say thank you. And I want to thank you all for who've been watching today. If this stream has really blessed you, I just want to encourage you to like it and to share it with your friends. That way more people can be blessed by what we're talking about. Because we really do want to help people who are suffering through being overly criticized or being too critical of themselves, or criticizing others a bit too much and haven't had the chance to see a healthy way of doing so. So please do share with your friends so we can help out more people in that. I would like to make you guys aware that when it comes to the broadcast we're doing on Thursday, we may or may not have it. We'll have to let you know as we get there. Turns out there's going to be a little bit of busyness that we're going to be working through on that day, so we might just do today and Saturday. But if you are on Facebook especially, we'll be able to let you know that easily. Otherwise, we'll find other ways of getting that information out there so you know what to expect. But otherwise, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again either Thursday or Saturday, but for sure at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to close this out a little bit differently, so bear with me. We're just going to go straight to the logo and play a little music and then close out, because we're having copyright issues with our music, and we don't need that crap in our lives. So.
Oh, and if you create music,
yes,
we are looking for somebody in-house to create music for us and also to promote.
Yes.
And we're also looking for an audio engineer if you want to volunteer.
Yes. Yes, we love it. We can't pay you right now, but we can, if you want to volunteer, we can always use the extra help. So you guys have a good night.